Hey guys, hope you're having an awesome week. My name's Jonathan and this is Tech Whiz Time, where I create technology tutorials and review videos. In this video I'm going to be looking at unboxing and reviewing the YEPO 737A budget laptop. Firstly though, I'd like to thank GearBest for sending this out to me. No money has exchanged hands and thoughts and opinions are my own. Alright, let's get unboxing. We've got a 12 volt 2 amp power supply there with a small barrel pin, and inside we've got a little instruction manual showing you about the laptop and setting up Windows 10. And the main event, nice foam, and YEPO, it's a YEPO. So the YEPO 737A is an N3450 Apollo Lake Celeron quad-core 1.1 GHz CPU. It's got 128 gigabytes of eMMC storage inside, as well as 6 gigabytes of RAM. The screen size that you're seeing there is 13.3 inches, and it's a 1080p IPS display, which is what I was really excited about. Comes with Bluetooth 4.0 and wireless N. It doesn't come with AC though by the looks of it. It's got a 4800 milliamp hour battery, which says to offer about 5 to 6 hours of standby time, so that's not very much use at all. Now the laptop itself does have the look of a MacBook, and from pressing the keys it does feel very similar to a MacBook. The trackpad itself is slightly recessed, so it doesn't actually feel like it's a part of the unit itself, which I actually don't mind because then I know where the trackpad is. On this side, you've got the headphone input, you've got a USB 3 port and a micro SD card slot. On the other side, you've got the 12 volt input as well as another USB 3 port and a HDMI port. And lastly, this also comes with a full version of Windows 10, so that's awesome. So with all those specs and ports out of the way, what we'll do is we'll boot this into Windows and we'll have a look at some of the benchmarks and what else it can do. So starting off testing the storage methods, we can see here that the micro SD card slot was getting a 23 megabytes per second read and a write of 23 megabytes per second as well. The inbuilt 128 gigabyte eMMC was looking at 130 megabytes per second on the read and 63 megabytes per second on the write. And just to change it up a little bit, what I've done is I've tested out the USB 3 read speed, since the micro SD card slot looks like it's only using the USB 2 chipset. So connecting a micro SD card reader to the USB 3 slot, we get speeds of 65 megabytes per second on the read and 51 megabytes per second on the write. So overall, I wouldn't use the micro SD card slot for anything other than pure storage, but have a USB 3 card reader handy if you want faster transfer rates. Alright, so over to 3D Mark now, we can see the overall score is 3076, whereas graphics is 3719 and physics is 1917, which is not a bad score for the N3450 chipset. So over to Geekbench, and we can see the single core score is at 1427, whereas the multi-core score is at 4251. So again, not too bad results. Now, as a few people are going to be using this for streaming video, we're going to look at some 4K and some 1080p tests. So what I've got here is the same jellyfish file, but in 4 different encodings. A 1080p H.264 55 megabits per second file, a 4K H.265 140 megabits per second file, same again but in 200 megabits, and same again but in 400 megabits. And what was really impressive is that this laptop was capable of handling all 4 files at the 30 frames per second. Now that is really impressive. So next up, what would a test be without Big Buck Bunny? So we've got the 30 frames per second 4K file here, and that was very smooth at 30 frames per second. And next up, I tried the 60 frames per second file, which does actually hurt a few CPUs. So in this circumstance though, we were getting pretty constant between 55 and 60 frames per second. So this is probably one of the better ones that I've experienced so far. All right, so the other thing that you might be doing on this one is some Steam gaming. So what I've done is I've loaded up Limbo, Fez, Super Meat Boy, and Rogue Legacy. And with Limbo here, you'll see that we're getting a pretty constant 30 frames per second here, which is really nice. In Rogue Legacy, again, we're getting that nice 30 frames per second, which is really good. If you haven't tried Rogue Legacy, I highly recommend it. It's a dungeon crawler with permadeath, but it's really, really interesting and really cool, so check it out. Next up was Fez, and this was getting a steady 30 to 40 frames per second. Now, I'm pretty sure that you can get up to 60 frames per second with this game, but as it stands, 30 to 40 frames per second is still pretty good. And lastly is Super Meat Boy. Now, this is a frustrating game and I die so many times. However, I am achieving about the 30 to 40 frames per second, and I did up this to 1080p and it was still getting some really good rates. Obviously at 720p, we're gonna get more than 30 to 40 frames per second. So that's Steam gaming out of the way. The other thing that you might want to try on this is emulation. And the first one up is the PSP emulator, PPSSPP. And the first game here is Power Stone. Now, in previous tests, this gets about 40 to 60 frames per second. In this particular instance though, we're looking at about 55 to 60 frames per second. So this is really capable of handling the PPSSPP emulation in most games. But then we get to the one that it struggles with the most, and that is God of War. Now, still pretty impressive. This actually achieves anywhere from 15 to 25 frames per second during gameplay, and that's pretty good, where most ones will only get 6 to 10, maybe 15 if you're lucky. This is minimum 15 frames per second, so not too bad. So with PSP out of the way, let's have a look at some Dolphin emulation, and in particular, let's have a look at the Wii game, New Super Mario Bros. And even though this isn't getting full 60 frames per second, it is getting between 50 and 60, and it's pretty much playable, as long as you configure the controllers correctly. And lastly, we'll try out some GameCube emulation, and in this particular instance, we'll have a look at Super Mario Sunshine, and we're getting about roughly 20 to 25 frames per second. It's not completely playable, but if you can put up with it, you can get away with it. So that's the YEPO 737A, and what do I think? Well, for a budget laptop that's worth less than $300, I've got to say it's not too bad. For these sort of specs, you're not going to get much cheaper. For those looking for a little bit more power though, you'll need to spend about $500 to $600 to get something more in the i5 range. If you're looking to get one of the YEPO 737As yourself, then I've provided a link down in the description below. So what did you think of my first laptop review? Leave me a comment down below and let me know if I missed anything or if you want me to expand on anything in the future. Your comments are always welcome and always read, even if I don't get time to reply to every one of you. So, are you a subscriber to the Tech Whiz Time channel? If you're not, then click on the subscribe button down below, but if you are, click on the bell icon so you get notified of my new videos. Like and share this video with as many people as you can on Reddit and Facebook groups, and as always, imagine, learn, create.